Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Wendy Yee.
I'm Chris Yee.
And we just posted a review of Darwin's Journey, which if you haven't watched, go watch that now. But if you did watch it, you're back. And we rated that game, if I remember, 8.5, 8, and 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
Great memory.
It's been a long I'm brilliant that way. What we're doing in this review is we're taking a look at the Fireland Expansion. Now, this game comes with a bunch of modules. The Fireland Expansion is by far the biggest module that's included in this thing here.
In fact, it's the whole other side of the board.
It is. And there's a lot of extra cards, a lot of tiles, a lot of different changes. When I initially saw that, I blew it off because A, if something's good enough, put it in the base game, in my opinion. And B, it had the negative points, and I was like, what? This game's already a tough slog. I don't need negative points included along with it.
Well, we've played so many games that have all that Kickstarter bloat that you're like, you don't even really add this in anyways unless you are going to play this game 80 times.
And I will say, before Chris explains, he's going to show you what's in this expansion, I will say I don't think this game has an easy way to pull it in and out. If you put it in the game, you might leave it there. There's little tiny numbers on each one with a letter F in front of them, right, for Fireland Expansion to pull out. It's tough. It's tough, I think, to put it in and out of the game. But we got a lot of comments where people are like, you got to try it with this expansion. It makes it better. It's the viticulture expansion.
The Tuscany.
I was like, all right, so we tried it. So Chris was going to tell you what it adds, then we'll tell you what we think.
Here's the board for the Fireland expansion. You'll notice that's the exact same on the top with the worker placement spots and the envelopes and the seals. However, the bottom here, the map, is significantly different. There's still one large shipping lane which runs the entire length of the board here on the bottom, and there are islands that you can jump onto. So as you move your ship past this interaction point here, you can put an explorer out onto the island just like the backside. However, there are a few more islands, and as you move this explorer past this interaction point, you can put out another ship into this little shipping lane here. When this one moves across this point, then you can start on this island. So there's a few more interaction points, more shorter tracks, and even some of these islands will cross into each other. There's a few other little things here, whereas if you get to the end of a track here, if you're the first person, you get these different randomized bonus tokens where you can get different benefits. And you'll notice that there are also these adventure tokens. When you cross past a land adventure or when you sail past a sea adventure token, you'll take one of the matching corresponding cards from this deck here, and you'll be able to choose between two different options. These do all have a codex, so this is number 9. So you could read Ocean Adventure number 9. What's happening here? You encountered rough seas and you get to choose between these things, and it also spells it out for you. This is going to cost either some time or some other resources. Maybe you can spend your book knowledge that you've gained from the museum, or you can spend money or victory points. But primarily time is what you're going to spend, and you get to choose between options here. If you choose the option that gives you the token itself, you'll collect this, and then you'll be able to work towards endgame scoring. So depending on the number of these tokens that you collect, both land and sea ones, you'll have either a penalty or more positive points at the end of the game. Speaking of time, there is on the Fireland board a time track here, which every time that you have to pay time as a penalty for something, an expedition or some other benefit, you have to spend time by moving further down this snaking track down here. As you move further down it, you will see that you will have a bigger penalty at the end of the game if you do not earn back time. And further, depending on which row you're in, you will accrue additional negative penalties. So maybe you won't be able to get as many book points from delivering to the museum. Or when you move and do the marching action, you have to move one fewer space, or seals cost additional coins for you. And if you ever move past this, you'll continue to earn a negative 3-point penalty until you can kind of get out of that. Another function of time is to be able to pay for a new resource shown in the game, which are these time wild seals. You can buy these from the market. They're shuffled into the bag. When you earn them, you have to pay the normal cost plus 1 time for grabbing one of those, but they count and they act just like any other purple wild seal. And here's just an example of some of the tiles that come in the game for additional setup, so more objectives that you can work towards, additional Beagle scoring goals, action spaces and such that deal with the new elements of spending time or earning time back, or new missions that require the adventure tokens of some sort or other. So that's what comes inside of the Fireland Expansion.
All right. Well, I already said this in the main review. I think this expansion makes the game better.
It's a game changer for me.
I don't think it makes it a little better. It makes it a lot better.
It does make it a lot better.
I enjoyed the base game the most, I think. Numerically, I enjoyed the most out of the three of us. I had a hard time in the basic review not giving the base game a lower score because of the fact that I do think this expansion significantly improves the game. But I figured that would not be fair for someone who just wanted to know, is the base game really good? Yeah, I think it's excellent.
I feel like this solved the problems that I had with the base game. There's so many more islands to explore on. I feel like doing a lot of different actions, it adds more strength to seals. It adds more strength to other actions. I don't know, I just feel like there's so many more, like it balances all the possibilities of the game and therefore makes me feel like I can explore so many different more strategies in this one, and that I'm just not trying to copy the same thing that someone else is doing and getting in someone else's way.
Yeah, I thought when you were mentioning that in the other review, I thought this must solve that because there is more tracks. And it solves my problem of I thought the ship track is boring. And the ship track isn't that much more interesting, except you now want to move down it because you unlock all these other tracks. And then there's little mini ship tracks, which are super interesting.
The fact that, you unlock a explorer who unlocks a second ship, and you're like, oh, now when I do the ship action, I can move 4 spaces. I have a real good choice between that. I agree that's better.
I also think that the base game, there was a huge focus on that museum, which thematically makes sense, right? The whole point of it is to get in the museum. But because the animals are spread out across so many different islands, and I think you even put more out across it, you're less likely to fill in almost every single row in the museum, which makes the museum a little less strong if you're going for it. But it also makes it so that you can do other things than just museum.
But it also makes the bonus action that gives you a free thing in a museum, or another action that just lets you take that if that one shows up, makes those better.
It does, yeah.
I agree.
I just feel like it rebalances so much. It makes it more fun.
All that would make the game much better. But it's the adventures that seals the deal for me.
I knew it. I knew it.
It really does. Okay, so I thought, when I first saw that time track, I was like, I don't know, I don't like doing negative stuff, hurting yourself to get better. But a couple things. One, it's not impossible to move up that track. In fact, there's ways to do it. And if you really are worried about it like I am, put out the special action, because you can choose the special actions. You don't have to do them randomly. In fact, they have special setups for that. But I would, if I'm playing with this one, I think I would always use a special action that you can move up on the time track, just so it's there, right?
Because you move down as a penalty to get adventures, but then you can choose to get away from the negative points. And I think that's big, right? Because I love being able to kind of balance that. So I agree. I would instinctively just throw in either an envelope bonus or just the action tile of move back spaces.
Right, one of the two of those. It doesn't have to be both. But the adventure, so in the back of the book here, they have, like the story of them. I read a few of them, but I mean, it's more silly than I don't care about that. But I love flipping a card and struggling between two good choices. One is usually not as good as the other, but it usually gives you that token, which I'm like, do I want the token? Because I stop other people from having an adventure. But also the token, well, yeah, but you get an adventure, it's good. Every time Chris draws an adventure, I'm like, oh, he's going to get something good. Probably better than what I got. But also those tokens matter. Now, I will, small side note, I don't like the scoring of the tokens. I don't like that it starts at negative, 10 and goes to positive 10 or something like that. Just start at 0. I get that it's like a psychological thing. I don't like the psychological thing. Don't playing psychological games with me. Just
play real games with Tom. Not psychological ones.
Yes. That's a minor thing, I think.
Yeah.
But
that kind of stuff doesn't bother me.
I don't know. It's a weird number spin. Like at a certain point, you get 5 tokens. You're like, well, 6 doesn't really matter. It's okay. But the adventures are so much fun. I will do them every chance I get.
And I think
it makes the tracks even better. The ship track's even better now.
It makes the ship track inherently exciting, which I think is probably the biggest shakeup from the base game. Although, to be fair, your point that the biggest shakeup might be the islands, more tracks to explore. But the adventures are exciting, more exciting. So I think here's the thing: is that you could read these little blurbs here. Oh, a coastal fort has fired its cannons towards our ship, and choose between these two things. Yeah, there's a little bit of story in there, but I think that the cards are mechanically thematic.
And I
Right?
assume that's for translation purposes, right? So they don't have to have text
Probably.
on the cards.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it's logical why they did that.
to print it on the
Yeah.
book here. And-
Also, there's not a ton of theme in the rest of the game, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do like when games are mechanically thematic. I like the idea that you look at between these two options. One of them is really good, eats up a little bit of time. The other one is way better, but eats up more time. And I don't need to read this little story blurb to understand what's happening there.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And I think that it does make, it makes that part even more exciting.
You know, I just remembered something else I like is that in the main market of seals, there's some wild seals.
They cost a time.
They do.
they're
They're
worth
so
it.
worth it. They're
I will
so worth
always
it.
go, yeah, if it's available.
And I think that's the thing, to your point, Tom, of always having in the setup some way to reduce the negative time that you have. I think the game would be less fun because you get to do less of those fun things if you didn't have that in the setup. I think it would still work mechanically. It's just everyone would run out of time. They'd be at minus 15 points, and they'd be like, I can't do anything now.
And keep spamming the lose 3 points for each time thing.
They also added a few tiles and stuff that the game in the expansion, somewhere in the rules, they tell you there's a few of these that you can use in any game. You don't have to use them with this expansion. And I was like, well, then why didn't you put them in they're right here. The base game came out. I'm like, then why did you put them in? Because they're fun. Why didn't you put them in the base game? But for me, everything about this is an improvement. I was really surprised. Not only is it an improvement, but if I'm teaching this to people, if you can handle Darwin's Journey, it's not a light game, but if you can handle Darwin's Journey, you can handle the expansion. So I'm going to just teach people with the expansion, I think.
I think so too. I think it's one of those things. Is the juice worth the squeeze? And I think that you get a better quality juice with just a little bit more effort.
I think the only reason why I wouldn't, because I agree, is if they were to learn the from the rule book themselves.
That's different.
That's
I'm saying if I'm
so
teaching.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So if I'm teaching and I'm playing, I'm saying, hey, play this great game. We're playing on the fun side. But if you're learning this yourself, I would recommend playing at least one game of the basic.
I would also recommend, we did not do this, but I would recommend you using the scenario cards. Picking a scenario card, because they tell you in here, each of the scenario cards, they give you the different tiles. It's not so much random at the bottom. And so when you pick that scenario card, it will say, this scenario card is good if you want to do this sort of thing. If you want to have a lot of time, like focus on giving players opportunities to gain and spend time. I want that.
Yeah.
An expert level scenario where correspondence and special actions do little to help the players and coins are hard to find.
No.
I don't want that.
No,
but
thank
maybe you do, and then you can pick that scenario and it tells you what things to put where. I'm very okay with that, but I'm also okay with playing what I call pseudo-random, which is you put things at random and you're like, oh, all the special actions are yellow seals. Oh, let's take two of them away until we get ones that are some other colors just to balance it out a bit.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that, and some people would be aghast that I did do that. But
Yes.
that's how I play most games. I call it the pseudo-random.
I agree.
All right, Wendy, so you had the lowest score in the base game.
I did.
A paltry 7.5.
7.5. I hated it. No.
What does this come up to
This
now?
one comes up to a 9 for me now.
Wow!
I really,
What a jump!
really enjoyed it. I did. That's the thing is I feel like this expansion made this into the game that I was hoping it was going to be from the beginning, and it fixed a lot of my issues with the original.
Wow. I'm also coming in at a 9. I was
Much
from
lower.
8.5. Yeah. I still like the basic front side of the board a lot, right? That's why I still give it an 8.5, a seal of excellence. But with this expansion, I really struggled with what number I would give the basic game. As I said, I thought if I pushed it lower, that would be maybe unfair to it. Because if that was the only thing that came out, I would still really like it.
Right.
But with this side of the board, the back side, the Fireland, the extra tracks, the time track, you move down and you suffer some penalties, but you did it to yourself, so therefore you know, ooh, okay, like I need to deal with the consequences of going on a fun adventure. That's great. That really rounds out this game and makes it even more just unique from the other stuff out there.
I'm also on 9. But I want to be clear, the difference between 8 and 9 for me is exponentially pretty. I give up very few 9s. But it made the game that much better. I I liked everything about it. I like the options. I like doing stuff no one else does. And this expansion allows even more of that. Like, I'm on this little island moving this track. I'm like, everyone else ignored this island, so I'm going to get the stuff on it. And that's fun, because you can do that. But the adventures, I just like flipping those cards. I wish there was more adventures, actually. I wish there was like twice as many. It's not that big of a deal. But each one, just, I like tough decisions that are both fun. And also that idea of like, I can spend time, I'll get rid of it later. And you will, but meanwhile, more ways to get money, more ways just to get oodles of stuff.
Oodles. Yeah.
Good stuff.
So, yeah. So that's Darwin's Journey with the Fireland expansion. There's other modules in the book here we can mention briefly. I already mentioned in the base game, the animal one. I think you should always play with that one. The pirates, I'm not as interested in that one, so maybe you can play with that, but it doesn't sound interesting to me. And then there's just extra Kickstarter stuff that's in every
Variable
thing.
player power ships and stuff.
We looked at
Sounds
those.
Fine.
They sound interesting, but I'm okay without them. I already think the game is super diverse.
And I would use the animals, I think, as a fun starting bonus and one-time action instead of having a permanent player. And I say that very rarely, that I wouldn't really want player asymmetry.
I agree. I almost always want a player power, but I already think there's enough going on.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's Darwin's Journey with the expansion. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Wendy Yee.
I'm Chris Yee.
And we're going on an adventure.